Brian, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really excited to talk to you and about the Survivor, the VR company that you're building. We sort of got to know each other through the Thai initiative, and I know you did really well on that. So congratulations for that. But before we get into the story, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing, and thanks Deval for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here. So my name's Brian. I'm the CEO of SurviVR, and I graduated 2 years ago in 2019 from college. This is a company I started while I was a sophomore. My background is in computer science, so that's what I studied in college. And today here at SurviVR, I've worn a lot of different hats as any founder would and should. But my top priorities today would include executive leadership, strategic initiatives, culture, and fundraising.
Fantastic. And I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. And when I was second, third year of college, last thing I wanted to do was start a company. So you're extremely brave and way ahead of your time on that. But what were you studying? What were some of the courses that really got you excited into VR? Tell me about that.
There was actually a rift between my coursework and VR and some of the other cool emerging technologies that got out there. The reason I wanted to study computer science and software engineering specifically is leaving high school, I graduated top 10, but I didn't really know exactly where I would be in 4 years after that. But I did feel that technology would be involved somehow. I think that was one of the right bets that I did make very early on. Is that I don't know where it's going to be, but it's going to be around technology somehow. I believe that technology is the future. We're seeing waves of new innovations, everything from AI to VR, and that's where I wanted to be, no matter what the role or capacity would be. So everything I've done I started 2 clubs at the university, one for AI, one for VR. And I was just a curious kid. I was interested to learn. I wanted to meet other people interested in the same topics, and so it was mostly on my own initiative. The coursework focused on more just core computer science concepts, just everything from basic programming in C++ to discrete math, computer architecture, those kinds of things.
Fantastic. So AR and VR are relatively specific things in computer science. There are 1,000 different things you can do. What drew you to these 2 things specifically?
I mean, yeah, there are a lot of new technologies out there. I mean, I could have gone towards blockchain or anything else too, but I just gravitated towards what I thought was cool and what I could understand.
Okay.
So I was a really simple guy. I saw VR and AR, and I believe that it would become the future of storytelling. These days, I think a lot of content out there is done on 2D screens, and people are forced to read these kind of long passages that no one really wants to read, which is you can apply that towards enterprise as well. And I felt that VR as a medium of content distribution and communication could mesh better with a new generation. I thought it was really cool. I mean, you put on the headset, I can put you on Mars, I can put you on the bottom of the ocean, really wherever. And so I was curious. I just wanted to learn more, and one thing led to another, and here I am today.
That's fantastic. No, and yeah, knowing what the type of work you're doing, it's great. When you started the company initially, what was the initial vision? What were you trying to achieve with these technologies?
So we have an interesting history as a company. We started in December 2016. We were not always SurviVR. When we started, our company was called immersive, and The word was the combination of immersion and osis, which means condition of like hypnosis, you know.
Mm.
So emosis, condition of being immersed. And so we never intended to build a real company, right? And I did not grow up wanting to do a startup or become an entrepreneur, not because I didn't want to do it, just because it never crossed my mind. I didn't know what these things were. It wasn't until
Right.
college that I kind of started to understand. So literally the only reason we started the company back in 2016 was because my co-founder, who is still the CTO today, we were part of the VR club that we started. And we just wanted to build projects to showcase the community. It's one thing to host events and talks about abstract principles around the technology, but it's another thing to actually show people what can be accomplished when you apply those principles towards a real product that people can see and experience, and ideally solve some kind of real world problem as well. So
Right.
We just started a company to house the IP so that we wouldn't get into any dispute with the university.
Right.
That's it. So we were literally two nerds that just wanted to build stuff and have fun. So we were building games. We were bringing it to conventions like South by Southwest. It wasn't until later that we were like, you know, it would be kind of nice if this was a legitimate business. So in 2017, we just decided, all right, let's get into consulting. Like it was, we kind of assumed it would be easy. It was not, but we kind of realized VR and AR are nascent technologies, and a lot of different founders and enterprises are trying to get into this, but not many people have the expertise to manage virtual reality production, which is essentially like game production. It's a lot more complex and intricate than building just scraping together some kind of app over a weekend. So we did consulting for a while. I was grinding and going to random events and conferences and chatting up with random people. We made 150,000 in services revenue in our first year of consulting before we went on to SurviVR. But I remember our first contract ever was a $500 contract to build a game design document. That's how we started. And so looking at where we are now, I just can't believe it. But yeah, anyway, SurviVR came around in 2018, September. And
no. This is amazing. I actually have a quick question on the consulting. What kind of companies were you reaching out to, or were the companies reaching out to you? How did you sort of take that business to the market?
I had no cohesive plan. I was just throwing stuff against the wall. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I went to a bunch of as many events, like networking events, conferences, and I just try to meet random people and strike up a conversation. Most of these never go anywhere, of course, but my priority was always building authentic relationships and providing value first. Only my policy for me personally, as the one salesperson, was if I hear out what they're trying to build and I believe that VR AR isn't an appropriate solution or way to implement the solution to their problem, then I would tell them straight up, and we would not sell them. I didn't think it was ethically right to do that. Even if they said, yeah, I have this idea, I think VR would be really cool, and I would just step in and I'd listen for 15 minutes and say, no, that's overkill. You could save so much money. So that's the approach I took. And of course, you tell some clients to don't do it. Of course, that's not going to go through. But it builds trust. It builds referrals. And we were working with clients, building projects, mainly in gaming. We had a client who wanted augmented reality for children's education, so like K-6. We had a virtual reality client in physical therapy. So it was kind of all over the place. And so, I mean, I could tell you a lot more about our experiences doing services, but that's kind of the surface level of it.
Okay. So no, that's really interesting, and I'm glad you had that experience with services before you actually started to develop your own product. So what was that transition like? What was the aha moment where you said, "Okay, no, let's not do that. Let's do this instead." Um, yeah.
We were, for various reasons, we were kind of getting burnt out from doing services.
Hmm.
I mean, I think one of the bigger frustrations from my end is it was very difficult for me to form a repeatable sales process around it, because we're
Hmm.
pitching ourselves as VR AR generalists. Unless you pick a niche and you stick to it and you focus 200% on it, you're just going to everyone and saying, hey, we do VR AR stuff,
Right.
and among other things. I mean, you have to do client relations. You're forced to scale with headcount, which isn't really so a lot of different things. So we had known for a while we wanted to move towards products, but I think we were very pragmatic with how we wanted to make that transition. We evaluated a lot of different ideas with subject matter experts, and each just one by one, shut down, shut down, shut down. And we were pretty quick about it, within 1 to 3 weeks usually.
Okay.
And it was getting pretty frustrating. We just shut down every single idea. And then one day, we met this retired police officer, and he was hosting a podcast like you are now. And so we got an introduction to him. We said, sure, it's consulting, so you basically want to market everywhere possible.
Right.
And we get on, we have the podcast. We tell him about what we're building with VR, and he's like, I want to try that out. That sounds so cool. We bring him to the office. We let him put the headset on, and he is blown away. He's in this zombie game, and he's like, "Oh my god, they're all up in my face!" And he's like, "This is the most immersive experience I've ever had. Have you guys considered using this to train the police?" And we were like, "I guess it's crossed our minds before, but can you elaborate on that?" And he goes into the constant liabilities and risks that police officers face when they come on the streets and face a number of unpredictable types of calls to service, individuals and situations. And he kind of tells us about how current police simulators are, and how what the technology that we specialize in could blow that way out of the water. We did a lot of research, and for the first time, a lot of it turned back positive and gave us more reason to explore further. And ultimately, I would say we fell in love with not just the business opportunity, but we could actually use our expertise to create a positive impact on the world. I mean, we started this company to make our community safer. We wanted to help people go home at night, and so one of there were a lot of advantages of starting 2 years prior with a consulting and game production business. It allowed us
Right.
to build a lot of in-house development tools that we carried over to Survivor. We built and started to manage development teams. We had internal operational processes, and of course the services revenue that we could just funnel straight to Survivor and Bootstrap. So
Right.
that was one of the ways we managed that transition. We also did pitch competitions, and we did decently well, and that gave us more funds to bootstrap with. But it was just really idea by idea, evaluating, is it worth our time or not? What are the risks? And ultimately, we settled on what later became Survivor.
No, that's fantastic, and I love that trial and error type philosophy where you can go through a bunch of ideas very quickly, like you said, in a week or two, and then just turn them around until you find an idea that really works. So again, that's a fantastic strategy. So with that police officer, when you started to work on, your product, Survivor, what was the initial version like, and what were you trying to achieve in those? I mean, I know a lot of first-person shooter games and things like that, but you guys, your mission was something different from what it sounds like. How did that vision develop?
When we were starting to plan the initial prototype, we made it very clear that there's a big responsibility that we have to build and deploy a real police training simulator, not a Grand Theft Auto game.
Right.
So so we I think one of the things we did right when we started the company was we started to contact and bring on the help of as many law enforcement officers as possible. So the police officer we first met with, he's still on the team today. He's our lead sales representative.
Oh, wow.
We brought on a chief of police to our advisory board. We worked through connections to speak in front of police events, which was how we got a lot of the initial interest, and we set up our pilots accordingly. But the first product, or it's not even a finished product, it wasn't deployable. It was a prototype. We had 1.5 training scenarios.
1.5. Okay.
Yeah, and they were like extremely simplistic compared to what we have today. It was essentially a nice proof of concept, if anything. It was enough for us to show, well, first to demonstrate internally that we could at least build something, and second, it's enough for us to take it out to the market and say, hey, this is what we're trying to build. This is what we have so far. This is where we're trying to go, and you kind of convey that pipeline. Mm-hmm. And it's enough to get people hooked, and that's all I needed to start setting up demos at each of these police departments and saying, hey, we're trying to start this pilot program during the summer. We're looking for up to 5 police departments in the area to pilot to. Would you be interested in have all those discussions? But we were really good at rapid prototyping. That was a good thing. We moved quickly.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And so when you were looking for those pilots, to set up the first 5 pilots, what was the response you were getting? Was it like, oh, you have 1.5 scenario, it's not worth our time? Or what was the initial reaction from the market?
I think the initial reaction was very positive. They of course, it was a whole room of different law enforcement chiefs. It was a monthly chiefs meeting that we went and spoke to, and towards the end of it, I think 20-ish came up to us afterward to try the demo and speak to us more. So overall, the ones that came up, they got it. They understood what we were trying to build and where we were trying to go. Training simulators are not a novel concept for mm-hmm. law enforcement, so they were able to grasp it pretty well. But I'm very grateful for those forward-thinking leaders. You really need those when you first start out, because we had 1.5 scenarios. They were so simple. There were bugs. Our first handgun was the most ratchet thing in existence. We didn't have the process that we have today for installing the different technology components inside, so it can communicate with the system and still look like a clean handgun. No, we had wires sticking out. There was duct tape on it. It was a mess, but it was enough. That's the
right
point. I think that's one of the things we were able to recognize early on, is that it's not going to be, and it shouldn't be a perfect product or anywhere near finished. It should just be enough to move to the next step.
All you need is a hook.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now tell me, let's describe the product for people who are listening, because I've seen photos, that I've seen the videos of the product, but it's essentially a goggle. Tell us all the pieces that are part of that equation.
Yeah, so I'll break it down from the ground up. So virtual reality police training simulator. You imagine you are an officer, you put on a VR headset, and we suddenly transport you into one of many different types of possible scenarios, everything from simple or complex traffic stops, we can throw you in domestic violence situations, emotionally disturbed individuals, school shooters, suicidal
So these are all
individuals.
the scenarios.
Yeah, and
That's the software that you have in
yeah,
there.
we have a lot. I'm just listing the first ones that come to mind.
Right.
And you imagine that you're suddenly immersed in this lifelike scenario where and you as an officer you're supposed to confront this individual, which of course, depending on the scenario, could be for a variety of reasons. Um, and it's our training encompasses every decision that you could possibly make, everything from use of force. So do you have to apply force, period, first? And if so, what level of force did you deploy and why? And ultimately, was that the right decision? But also, and one thing that we really specialize in compared to other simulators is communication, de-escalation, and empathy skills with other suspects who are, well, they're humans, and
Right.
so it's basically one of the main selling points of our simulator is our scenarios can be modified in real time. How current simulators do it is they'll essentially play videos on huge TV screens, and
Right.
if you know, it's like a YouTube video. Videos by definition will play from start to end. They are pre-scripted, they are predetermined. So therefore, if you try to talk to a YouTube video, go ahead, turn on the Titanic and try to talk to Jack. Is that his name? But try to talk to him and see if he responds. They do
Right.
not care what you say or what you do. This is how police training is predominantly done. They'll play these videos of these scenarios, but you can't really communicate and try to really de-escalate a suspect, because the videos are going to keep playing. They're going to keep talking over to you. I've done it myself. I've been in the simulator. It is incredibly awkward.
Right.
And we wanted to design a system the complete opposite way, to where these scenarios at any second in time can permutate towards a completely different direction. And so you can have realistic back and forth conversations with the virtual suspects, because now they will respond to you, and you don't know what they're going to respond with. They could respond with anything, verbally or physically.
Right. And that's what I love about VR, that, like you said, video, if you've seen it once, you know how it's going to end, right? So then there really isn't a point in going through it a second time or a third time, because you know the ending. Whereas in VR, you can take the same scenario, play it 5 different times, and come out with 5 different endings, right?
Right, exactly. So I heard a story once, and this police officer back in the day uses those similar training simulators, and he said, yeah, you basically know that when the woman steps out and she's wearing the Budweiser t-shirt, you're going to shoot her. But if she steps out in the Heineken t-shirt, you're not going to shoot her, because you know already what's going to happen. That's
right.
And what's the point? And then when you come across a situation in real life, you're not prepared to think on your feet, to communicate back and forth, to whether they're going to be threatening you, they're going to be aggressive, they're going to say something that you've never heard before, and you don't know how to respond. Things like that. Videos cannot prepare you for that.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's why I love your product. Let's talk a little bit more about what's included in the kit that that you're selling with the VR headset you already mentioned. Are there guns? Are there other things that the officer can use in that simulation? What are some of the other pieces?
Yeah. So the goal here is to immerse police officers in the most realistic circumstances possible. It should be as if they're there in the real world, and therefore they should have every force option on their duty belt that they normally would have. And so it can vary by police departments, but typically there's a handgun involved, which type will again vary. There's a taser, there's pepper spray. Sometimes there may be batons. We have rifles. So it really can depend on the customer. Some of them have no need for certain things, but we essentially give them every force option that they usually would have.
Got it. Got it. Okay, perfect. So let's talk about where you are today. You obviously have made a lot of progress since 2018. Have lots of scenarios now. Where are you today, and what's the next challenge that you're working on now?
Yeah, so we had a successful first year's sales after we launched, and that was in 2020. So this year we're essentially in growth mode. We're trying to build up on this revenue from the prior years as much as we can, and look back at the data from last year, the sales marketing data. All right, what worked, what didn't work, what should we invest more in, and why do we believe that's the case, and figure out and fine tune what levers are we pulling to stimulate that growth. And so that's a very high level answer, but I think one of the biggest priorities is growing our sales force. And so we've taken multiple different creative steps to trying to do that. But that's I would say that's the big thing in the short term.
Okay. And I think the main message that you've already mentioned a couple of times is de-escalation. And obviously 2020 was a challenging year for a lot of reasons, least of which is, all of the racial issues that have surfaced. How was your product received in that environment with the focus on de-escalation?
What we saw was inbound actually increased afterwards, and for example, one of our customers, it's a capital city, and they were telling us that we obviously loved your simulator, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here buying it. But beyond the actual capabilities of the product, we want yet another thing to tell our communities that, hey, this is what we're doing to improve our police forces to better serve you. And so we kind of saw an added value proposition there from the customers. And that's more of an administrative value proposition. So the chief and the sheriff would be interested in that in particular. But I think overall, I think that we sell training. We don't sell. We're not selling tear gas. So. Last year was absolutely an interesting year, but training is always needed. Training is not going away. Law enforcement always has training standards every 12 to 24 months anyway, at the minimum, which can vary by state. But we felt that no matter how bad world events or the economy will get, training is not going to go away. You cannot have a police force that's not adequately trained, right?
Absolutely.
So we, if anything, we saw increased growth after events from last year.
Okay, fantastic. And if people want specific information, obviously we have all of that as part of your profile on Startup Steroid. So if investors are listening, they can certainly register and get access to all of that information. But now let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the next 12 months. What are you trying to achieve? You already mentioned, growing out and building out your sales team. What else is required to really scale the company? Are there any other technical challenges you need to achieve? Any other, hardware issues that you need to take care of? Anything like that?
On the product side, our engineering pipeline is fairly aggressive. Where if you want to think about it from a more abstract level, even beyond 12 years, the goal of the engineering team is to identify all the different gaps between the current product that we have, the latest iteration, and what a real world experience call to service is like, and removing those gaps one by one. Every release we push out should increasingly be more lifelike. So that's kind of and that can obviously mean a lot of different things, and our pipeline accounts for that. But our product is in a pretty good spot. Each scenario platform we have can, again, because they can be modified in real time and there's no predetermined end point, they essentially have infinite permutations. They can end in an infinite number of ways. So there's endless repeatability in every different platform that we have, and we have like over 25 at this point. So
Wow.
so the product is in a good spot. It's more about fine tuning at this point. So a lot of the big focus is really on sales and marketing. We're attending more conferences. We were going to do that last year, but COVID wiped everything out. So
Right.
we couldn't lean on that yet. Our efforts last year were largely digital, and so we're increasing our presence. We've partnered with more more, I guess, ad companies, strategic marketing companies in the law enforcement space. We're looking at potential strategic sales partners, and of course, growing our internal sales force as well. Where inbound has been increasing nicely, marketing is working, and so we're getting more inbound leads each week than our current sales team can handle. It gets really stressful sometimes, and it just nonstop travel, and some of our sales reps don't really get to see their families often, and I feel really guilty about that. So we're a lot of it's making sure we have more feet on the ground to manage the incoming demand, because the industry is only becoming more educated on VR training methods, and also finding creative ways internally to make sales and marketing more efficient.
Got it. No, that's fantastic. And yeah, so now the focus is really on scaling the business. So that's the perfect time for an investor to come in and ride that rocket ship with you. Let me ask you about the big vision for the company. Where are you hoping to take this? Let's say over the next 5 years or beyond. Where do you see this company going?
When people think about e-commerce, they usually think about Amazon. When people think about search, they think about Google. In 5+ years from now, when people think about public safety training, I want them to think about SurviVR. The goal, the vision here is to become the world's highest standard of law enforcement training, to be the most undeniably lifelike training experience that any public safety official can get. And when I say that, I don't mean just law enforcement. You have fire, you have EMS, you have other adjacent types of responders, private security as well. Even today, we have different leads reaching out. We have private security, we have universities, high schools of all places, but it's actually happening. And so that's really the big vision. And we want to become the most trusted source of realistic police training. And by then we'll surely be in a lot more verticals as well. Different organizations beyond law enforcement require public safety training.
Fantastic. That's a great mission to chase after and try to achieve. So fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us today. I really appreciated learning more about you and the company. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think is important that you'd like to highlight?
And this question always catches me off guard. Well, I think I'm really proud of the team that we've built. We have 10 full-time employees today. 50% of our full-time employees are former law enforcement. And so
Wow.
we can really say that we are made by cops for cops. And of course, we balance that out as much as possible with other external sources of feedback. And but we built up a very interesting and driven team today. And again, this ties back to one of the first things we did was, if we're going to break into law enforcement, we need to have law enforcement experts, and that that was one of the things that actually turned out to be correct, and it actually came to fruition. So I'm really proud of the team. They hustle very hard each week, and I wouldn't be anywhere here without them.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's the perfect note to sort of end the interview on. And yeah, 50% of the full-time employees are police officers. I think that says a ton about you, about the company, and about the product. So once again, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciated having you here, and hope to make the introductions with investors through the platform, and get you the resources you need to continue scaling. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.